Well, you see that moth that's trying to get into the cupboard? What's it doing?
It's up to something. I don't want it there.
You don't want it there. But what's the moth got to do with everything, you know? So if you was the moth, it's everything for you to get in that cupboard right now.
Right.
And that's what we are. We forget we're the moth sometimes. We forget we're all these things. And we don't, you know, given our higher reasoning, yeah, we don't take much responsibility with that. We just go, oh wow, lights, switch it on, boom. It's expected, isn't it? That's why decadence corrupts us.
Why? What's the association that we're thinking?
Because you don't even value how you got it in the first place. So therefore, the fertile ground.
That's a massive leap, though. Massive leap.
Maybe for you, but for me, I see the relationship.
The decadence of these modern people that turn on light switches they don't appreciate.
Yeah, they don't. I'm saying a lot of people don't think about that, do they? You know, they just expect it to be on, and if it wasn't on, oh. Maybe it's a minor problem, but if it wasn't on permanently, that might arise in some people a real problem because their whole life depended on such things. And now they're suddenly faced with a brand new thought, and that thought is in conflict with what they always knew to be true. Do you know what I mean? The problem is we as thinking beings find it very hard to change the way we think. And it's not just the them that suffers that, but also us. So in understanding that we ourselves suffer that, once we can answer for ourselves how we change ourselves, then we can start to address the issue of why others won't change.
What's it got to do with anyone else? Why has anyone's change got to rely on someone else?
Well, you know, am I my brother's keeper?
Maybe the point is that maybe, you know,
do you care?
To go through it yourself. That's the whole point.
All right, but having been through that,
for yourself, having been through it, how can you have been through it and still be alive?
Well, because we can carry the history around with us, memories.
When you're doing it, mate.
Yeah, you don't have to be.
When you just put your shoes on.
Well, that's like saying, you know, someone, let's say someone tries to be, have a skill, and then saying that, well, they can't teach anybody because, you know, they're still learning themselves. Yeah, but, you know, they're at a different level. We're all at different levels. That's what I'm trying to say. You're maybe more advanced at this moment in the teachings of Nietzsche. But that's not something for us to make war about. Do you understand? That's something that I should be now listening to you, and you should be telling me Nietzsche.
Only if Nietzsche's thoughts matter at all.
Well, why are you reading it?
Ah, well.
I mean, what's wrong with your own thoughts? That's really, you know, have you not grasped that you could think these concepts? Well, and that's why the disconnection, disassociation.
It's just a tool for me to, you know, if my thoughts have been teething stage, then other writers.
Right. So basically, reading that book from that. Yeah. So it's a dummy. You're sticking a dummy in your mouth to soothe.
It's not a dummy, and it's not a soothing thing. I'm teething, and I need to sharpen my teeth. So I'm sharpening my teeth. Don't think of being soothed.
But you see, because I'm saying it like that, it's just like when we perceive ourselves as being in that baby stage.
It's meat, Jules. Meat.
It says the man putting the milk in the fridge.
This is tea. That's meat. There's a difference.
Maybe. The point is, you have your own thoughts, and you're going and asking this guy about his thoughts, or as directly as you can ask him. Obviously, he's dead, but you know his thoughts have been recorded, and we're doing the same. We're recording our thoughts, and so maybe some future generation will try and unravel this and go, well, what's this guy really talking
future
about?
Generations? What are you talking about, Jules?
Well, you don't think there's going to be future generations?
Well, in Jeremiah has written of, you know, in this place there'll be old man with grey hairs and the little children still. But I don't think that necessarily is the pertinent point to the here and now, when everyone should be looking to themselves and Maybe. Learn fear
But
of the unknown.
I say that's part of the problem. Everyone is looking to themselves.
Yeah.
You know, that's the new religion, isn't it? Selfishness. I exist, therefore everything better go my way.
No, I exist, and there's not much I can do to help anyone else. When at the end of the day, the Father has us all.
Not much we
By
can
the
do.
short and
Well,
careless.
it depends on what you think doing is. I mean,
What are you going to do? Go out with a placard which says, repent.
some people get paid all day long for having an idea, okay? And I've been stuck around a bunch of people sometimes who are very unproductive. And part of the reason they're unproductive is they don't even have an idea. You know, I look at things and I go, right, okay, we've got a few sticks there, you know, we got that. Oh, maybe we can build a shelter, or maybe we can build a fire, you know, because the current condition is we don't have none of that. Just by looking at the basic things you do have, and that's what I concluded last time, you know, with the superhero mythology. If you don't look after what you've already got, that's what's really important. You know, we go lusting after the grass is greener and we forget what we've got. We go lusting after the newest technology, we forget what we've already got, reading and writing and the skills that got us this far anyway. But now, that's not important, because if you don't have an iPhone, hey, your knowledge in your head, my iPhone can show you it. You know, and that's the only difference. The iPhone makes it a visual display.
That's assuming that
But it's still human knowledge that is being displayed.
Right, okay, fair enough. But some people find a treasure in a field, and I'm not being funny, but they ain't telling the whole town about it until they've got, you know, some sort of.
Is that wisdom, or what is that?
To the land.
What is that? Based on
I ain't
the-
telling the motherfucker it. You know what I mean?
Based on his current social, which is a kind of like technology,
based on
the
your-
superimposed
based on
rule of money and economics and having more money and more power and all them delusions and competition. That's why he thinks like that.
No.
If he'd have grown up in a world where, hey, resources are everybody's, and, you know, we actually care about each other, you know, not superficially, but, you know, realizing that this is the only way we'll ever find what we're really looking for. The inner peace, the inner contentment, you know, to know all these things. Because when you go to so far as to make sure that the smallest individual is protected in their rights, in their liberty, then you're basically saying the same to yourself, aren't you? Because that could be you through any set of circumstances. Your house could burn down, anything could happen. And if it did happen, then you're suddenly in that position. And wouldn't it be nice if people actually gave a damn? You know? Rather than, you weren't born a millionaire, so therefore you couldn't afford the special insurance. So therefore your life can go to shit and no one cares. Hey, yeah, that's the society we want, innit? Or could we have a society where actually resources exist all around? And if we like living in some Mormon society, I don't want to use them specifically, you know, but say a bunch of people who are self-sufficient and they live in the wilderness and they can just build a house through the community. If someone's house burnt down, then, it's a loss. But as long as life isn't lost, the most important thing, we can rebuild the house. And that's what they do. You know? Because the eternal virtues, the things that are eternally true, are more important.
Yeah, but you can argue about those so-called eternal virtues.
If you don't know them yet, if you're not sure what they are.
If you don't know them yet.
Well, what do you think they are?
What do they matter when you're going beyond the notions of good and evil?
How can you do that?
The bigger
How can you do that?
which sees all things as necessary.
Wait, you're saying beyond the notions of good and evil.
Yeah.
In this life,
In
you
this-
can't do
in this
that.
life. Of course you can.
What we call an advantage or a gain or a win. You go, I won the pools. You know, you're gaining, aren't you? You're gaining something. You gain the money, it gives you access to more resources. Lucky you. Okay? In that typical way of thinking, that's brought on by the world. Why you think like that?
What's good about it? What's evil about it?
Well, it depends who's controlling the strings. If you're in full control, then only you will determine that. But when others do it for you, and then you're stuck with what seems like a choice, but it's only a choice that's restricted by the choice they made in the first place to give you that choice.
Does any of the external necessarily encourage the growth of a greater soul? Do any of the trappings? Maybe it's
no, they don't.
Maybe it's more the harshness of life, which gives us the
you said that, and I agree.
So,
I agree.
And maybe if you're such a man anyway, the trappings of social existence won't affect your soul.
How does one become decadent? Is decadence an external or is it an internal thing? Because to me, decadence is internal. That's why I said last time it's spoiled. But people don't identify it with being spoiled. They think, well, no, it's something of the outside world, and because we're all living like that, it's not decadence even. It's just normal. But so then, what's your starting off point? What are you measuring it against?
The atrophy of the soul.
Exactly, because we're not measuring it against the lowest position. If you look at the lowest member of society or the human race and say, well, that's the lowest, this is the highest, and then you might look at someone like the Queen and say, everything in between is like the shades of grey. But that's why good and evil are such great compass points. Soul. Good and evil are like north and south.
That poor impoverished person.
You need coordinates.
What's his soul going through in terms of
the soul lacks coordinates. The soul doesn't even know where it is.
You will keep flapping your mouth regardless of what I say. Yeah.
No, I'm with what you're saying.
No, you
don't recognise that.
You're talking about a rich person and a poor person, but who's to say who's mastered themselves in such a way as to hold their emotions in check, as to hold their passions and cravings in check, as to realise, their position in the whole scheme of things, to understand themselves in terms of their soul evolution. What's rich and poor got to do with that? Maybe if you're rich, you've got access to the books, but maybe if you're poor, you have access to the experience. But who's to say? And unless you actually start using the mind for more than just something to pad out your head.
That's why when you said a book is like a teething ring.
A book can lie unread and dusty, and what does it matter?
But they are experiences. They are, like you said, you've got the poor man, he has the experience, and that is a richer source of. Well, it's direct knowledge, isn't it? It's direct.
Why even contrast the one?
Whereas the other one is indirect, and you have to empathise.
When you only experience your own, and you realise that,
Do you empathise with yourself, or do you just become that and have that experience? A book is an experience from the author's point of view, but for everybody else, it's empathy. And if you don't have empathy, you won't truly even see his words. That's why music can be interpreted differently. It's written that way, but you don't have the feeling that I had when I wrote that. And therefore you're not having that experience.
It's not about what the person was feeling when he was writing that. It's like the Father's provided me with certain environment. I can pick up and see what relates to me. And mostly everything does, because it's created, to suit me.